we can start? Yes. Dear Deputy Prime Minister, dear Minister, dear guest, thank you all for joining our panel today covering the discussion on financial innovation and instruments under uncertainty. The emergence of a new alternative investment instrument, more intensively and directly engagement of a broad investor public accompanied by high valuations and increased usage of technologies are some of the trends marking recent period. According to a new McKinsey global survey, COVID crisis has produced a quantum leap of digital adaptation at both organizational and industrial level, changes that will stay here for a long run. A domestic market view on investments emphasizes a focus on investing in stocks and shares. However, the financial system industry is undergone a data-driven revolution in recent period, transforming the kind of products and opportunities available, how firms offer their services, how they interact with their clients, how the risk has been assessed, and as well how the decision has been made. Hence, one of the main priorities to respond to the demand of the new era investors is to be at the forefront of technological growth, to offer the widest products and the widest financial services which are tailored to the need to all investors as to fulfill the vital role in enabling the financial sector to achieve its potential and position the domestic economy for sustainable growth. How does our market react to the new normality? Do we, as a policymaker, adapt to the optimum pace, or do we struggle to follow more developed EU markets with new innovative and competitive instruments to motivate investors to finally abandon the traditional way of short-term investments in stocks and to invest their money in funds which further will be financed, the companies will be financed with it, especially the companies that are new on the market. Should other activities should be taken in combination with the regulation? And is the regulation, in fact, an obstacle so far to changing the way how investors think? Will be topic for today's discussion. Before we start the discussion, allow me to introduce shortly my panelists today. Our first speaker today has recently joined the ministry, coming from a strong background in the financial sector, in the field of investment banking, financial analysis and asset management. A part of the management in pension industry, he participated in implementation of investment strategies that included innovative instruments, the development of hedging models that include modern technologies and a wide range of instruments. Please be welcome the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Filip Nikolowski. Our second speaker, the only woman on this panel representing highly valued financial regulatory segment, known as a leader in promoting innovative in her work, persistent in supporting financial education, hardworking woman, and highly appreciated professional among her colleagues, it is my honor to have Ms. Nora Aliti, the President of Securities Exchange Commission, as a speaker today. Mr. Ivan Shteriev, the Chief Executive Officer at the Macedonian Stock Exchange, is considered as a dedicated professional who selflessly invests in his work. His attitude, great enthusiasm, and vision influence the creation of the modern stock in our country. Please welcome. The Director of the Fund for Innovation and Technological Development in North Macedonia and Professor at the Department of Computer Science in State University of Tetova, with a long academic background as well as political experience. Please welcome Mr. Festim Halili. Our fifth speaker today is addicted to figures and analysis. Person who wants to create a policy based on numbers and not numbers based on policies. Wants to know his starting point, to set the goals and insist to measuring the result. Known for his innovative and future-oriented approach in the work. Mr. Jovan Despotovski, Director of the Directorate for Industrial Technology Development. The only banker on the panel today, coming from Turkey, often says that he feels like a proud Macedonian, especially when he's cheering for our handball teams. In leading the bank and his team, he is leaving significant footsteps on the Macedonian financial market, involved in different important roles and a great ambassador of our country business in Turkey. Last but not the least, Mr. Bilal Sujobashi, Chief Executive Officer of the Halkbank Macedonia. Thank you. Thank you, panelists, for accepting the invitation to discuss today. I will start with the Deputy Minister. Mr. Deputy Minister, the Growth Acceleration Plan is a document that has been prepared last year by the team of the Ministry of Finance, based on a new approach, offering coordinated support on public and private sector investment blending in a number of different areas, detailing available funding sources and funding instruments. So how do you assess the vision for modernization of the financial system in our country, especially in this crisis period? What kind of incentives do investors might find while uncertainty is still high in these new normal times?
Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you for your kind introduction. The most difficult panel is the one after the lunch, but it's motivation for us to do it in more dynamic and more efficient way. As you said, Growth Acceleration Plan is a general framework. It was established by the government last year, and it will play the key role in boosting new jobs and growth in the economy of North Macedonia. The ultimate goals of this plan are threefold. First one is to increase the investment, to use in a more efficient way the publicly investment funds, which are planned to be at the level of 4 billion euros in the next 5 years, which will boost also the private investments for at least at the same level or maybe double. Then the second most important thing is to accelerate the growth, to make double the rates, which are 2.5% growth in the last decade as in average, to make it at least in average 5% growth for the medium term, which is also aim of the government of the North Macedonia. And the third important thing is to ensure the fiscal consolidation, where we have an aim to put public debt at level or below the level of 60% from GDP. Some of the few of the instruments that are part of this growth acceleration plan and which will be put in action very soon by the government and the Ministry of Finance are inflation-linked bonds, which will be government bonds, guaranteed government bonds issued by the Ministry of Finance on long term and will be indexed to the inflation rate. Then project bonds who will be connected and aiming to develop some project on local and regional level in the field of infrastructure, construction of roads, maybe some sewing and irrigation system. And the third one will be the green bonds connected to the green agenda and transition, to focus on green transition, which is also in high focus of EU and the government of North Macedonia. All these new instruments will be available to the retail sector, to the individuals, also to the banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and other financial institutions. I will stop here and give the floor to the next panelist, so we'll have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you for your plan. Now let's continue with the regulatory segment. Ms. Aliti, the interaction between regulation and innovation is complex, multifaceted, and often ambitious. Does financial innovation pose a challenge to regulators? Is regulation an obstacle to innovation? Or can regulation foster innovation? How do you view this relationship, regulation, innovation?
Thank you, Magdalena. I'd like to join also the Deputy Minister in thanking you for that generous introduction, and thanks for the invite. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here today with all of you. Coming back to your question, innovation by definition does upset the status quo. So yes, that presents a challenge for regulators. But it is also a challenge for the rules of the game and for the other players. From a regulatory standpoint, the main challenge or the main struggle is how to strike that right balance between protecting the end user and fostering innovation. Because when new products or new technologies come along, the need for investor protection doesn't go away. Additionally, established players on one hand may argue that the new guys on the block aren't constrained with the same rules as the incumbents. While on the other side, the new entrants might argue that regulatory compliance is costly, that too much regulation is imposing unreasonable entry barriers, and that can protect vested interests or can impede innovation and competition. So really, depending on your standing position between these two opposing sides dictates whether there is too much or too little regulation. I occasionally like to remind people that regulation is there for a reason, and I would say its existence is mostly valued during times of crisis. However, having said that, one thing is certain: regulation and regulators do not constitute an environment that is hostile to innovation. We want to ensure that the benefits of innovations are unlocked because of the regulation and not despite of it. And we genuinely try to walk this talk. And here I can bring as an example that during March of this year, the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, SEC, and also other financial regulators joined forces. We created a committee that is there to support the development of innovation in the financial system, or the so-called FinTech Committee. And we are also jointly and actively working on a national FinTech strategy. And this committee will be tasked with implementing it. So one good tool that will be put to use through this process is what is widely called as regulatory sandbox. It will help us, regulators, to better understand how innovation is working and hence build better rules, but also it will help qualified entrants to offer those innovative products without that fear of regulatory sanctions, as to say, to test the waters without having a fear that will come with some sanctions. Another example I can bring up here is the no action letter also as a tool that is used to make the experimentation a little bit easier. And SEC has used this tool in the past for a crowdfunding platform that today, the same one in cooperation with the Macedonian Stock Exchange, is available to our domestic entrepreneurs and investors alike. And to sum up, I'm really not an expert in relationships, but I can say with confidence that the relationship between regulation and innovation is really like any other new relationship. We shall hug without suffocating, and it's important that in those early days we don't go too fast, too deep, and too early. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Aliti. Very useful. Continuing with Mr. Stariev, following the Deputy Minister remarks on the development of the new instrument, as well as the innovation in the regulation in landscape, referring by Ms. Nora Aliti, can you please give us a snapshot on the market data, the availability of instruments on the Macedonian Stock Exchange? Can we consider the working of the Macedonian Stock Exchange as an innovation?
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody, and congratulations to the Ministry of Finance for organizing this very unique and important event, and of course inviting me to this panel. Regarding your question, Magdalena, it's with two sub-questions about the statistics and about the conditions, innovations, and what is going on. About the market snapshot, as more or less everybody knows, the pandemic, not only here but globally, ended up to be quite good for the stock market. On the, let's say, having in mind this enormous monetary and fiscal measures for helping economies, in the still environment of low interest rates and probably less spending during the pandemic, people were investing, legal entities were investing. And to complete this part of the answer, because of that, for example, in 2021, Macedonian Stock Exchange has the record turnover, the biggest one in the last decade. Even these 5 months of this year, the turnover is still good. The price performance is also quite good of the main shares. For example, in the last 5 years, the main stock exchange index, MBI 10, is up 188% for 5 years. We are quite unique, and now I'm touching the field of innovation and or maybe some let's say good trends as well. We are quite unique in the region that we have quite high participation in the turnover of the domestic retail investors. So it goes from 40 to 60% in the last few years, and this is quite good because this is actually achievement of this trend of democratization of investment. So obviously we as a marketplace, we are providing to the retail investors a kind of different investment opportunities, and this is quite good trend. Although there is, and this is connected with the regulation as well, there are some possible, let's say, aspects to be taken into consideration as well. Whether we are speaking in this region from the point of view of the stock markets, what is traditional, what is innovative, it's a tricky question, because what is traditional in the developed markets, it is still challenge here, and it is innovation. So maybe to conclude my answer, I will say few sentences in which I will explain what is our, let's say, idea and strategic vision as a stock exchange in order to carry out the function which is not carried out throughout the region about giving corporations place for obtain financing, market financing, besides the banking loans. So we are sharing the vision of few other stock markets in the region based on one strategy of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development to offer to all kinds of companies possibility to tap the public markets and to raise capital besides the banking sector. So we are offering, even for limited liability companies, this crowdfunding platform that Mrs. Aliti was also explaining. We got great support from the SEC, and they allowed us as a stock exchange to run or to promote this crowdfunding platform. It is in cooperation with Zagreb Stock Exchange and Estonian crowdfunding company Funderwin. So if you are limited liability companies do not want to transform, you can raise capital through this crowdfunding platform. Also, we have small market segment for small companies. It is not well known in the public. So if you're a corporation and you want to be listed, and prior to that, of course, to raise capital, you can list without having different difficult conditions. So the only two conditions are to have 2,500 capital and to have at least one audited report. With the harmonization of our legislation with EU, I assume we will liberalize additionally this segment even without prospectus, etc., etc. And finally, for big companies with the corporations that are already listed, there is the stock exchange listing segment, including super quotation listing segment. We modernized that with the recent, again, joint project with SEC, new corporate governance code. We also published new only reporting guidelines in the region for environmental social governance reporting, etc., etc. So we are here for companies, and in the new environment with obviously and unfortunately increasing interest rates, with all these new challenges, talking about resilient, bigger capital in the companies, I hope that stock markets in the region, in Macedonia, will be a good opportunity for companies.
Thank you, Mr. Steriev. Continuing with Mr. Halili, the Fund for Innovation stands as a leading state institution in support of micro, small, and medium enterprises, especially also in the companies which are in early stages of development. I would like to ask you to elaborate on the importance of having such an institution, referring to my introduction words, and what are your plans for the future?
Okay, thank you. Initially, I would like to congratulate you for this wonderful event where we had the chance to listen to great international speakers and Nobel Prize winners. Back to your question, it is an honor, but also it is a big challenge to lead the Fund for Innovation and Technological Development, because it is one of the main pillars and one of the main institutions for supporting the private sector and especially the small and medium enterprise. Regarding our plans for the future, they are multidimensional, because we tend to, when we think about innovations, we tend also to include the academia and also the researchers in promoting these innovations together with the private sector. So also, it is very challenging to design the calls so that we make reliable calls, so that we promote also equal and regional growth in the entire country. Also, we are working and we pursue to work in the national strategy for the artificial intelligence, which would be the first AI strategy in our country. We know that the technological revolutions are very common in today's world, and according to the Moore's law, each 18 months we have some new technologies, and it is very challenging to follow these revolutions. Also, we try to ease a bit the work of the Ministry of Finance. Here is Mr. Bissimi with us today, so that we be a bit independent from the country finances. Lately, we applied in a Horizon Europe project, which is the program of the European Union about research and development in innovation, and we were successful with the application together with the DLR, the German aerospace agency, so that we create this ecosystem of the companies that we will support through the finances and through the budget allocations from the European Union. In addition to this, we need to well define the term of innovation, because we believe that creativity is thinking about new things, but innovation is doing these new things, and that's what we tend to do. We tend to build this ecosystem of new technologies which will help accelerate the economical growth of our country.
Thank you. Continuing with Mr. Despotovsky, the Prime Minister yesterday on his speech mentioned a new concept that is implemented in the industrial zones. The industrial zone had a record high in 2021 with over 3 billion exports for the first time. Is it due to the new concept that you are trying to implement, or it's starting, the new concept is starting this year?
Thank you for your question and the beautiful introduction.
To be here and attend the audience today. Of course, thank you very much to all that have survived the lunch and still decided to stay and follow this panel. The 3 billion exports last year actually is the record high in the technological industrial development zones. And I will be very unfair and selfish to say that it's thanks to the new concept. Of course, the new concept has its contribution to the achievements. Of course, it's partly due, of course, or to a large extent due to the model and to the let's say to the activities of my predecessors. The new concept is based on the, let's say, on the recognition that what happened, let's say, with the pandemics caused us to think how we need to change, how we need to adapt, how we need to innovate. The pandemics also showed that we are very vulnerable when it comes to the portfolio, because the portfolio is consisted of 99% of one industry only, which is again vulnerable on many external factors. So a smart country should think, and this is what we are thinking and already trying to implement, is to diversify the portfolio and to restructure the portfolio. When I say diversify, I mean also introduce other sectors except for automotive. And the second thing is to restructure in the terms of also to allow for companies, domestic companies, but also companies which have a higher potential for growth to be also part of the family. The new concept is based, which we have started to introduce already in practice since last year, is based on a very simple premises that the state aid as such is not considered as aid, because the companies do not need an aid or assistance from the government. It is actually the government who is providing co-financing to investments coming from the private sector, meaning that the government should be a partner to the investors. When we say partner, it understands that practically the government needs to receive certain benefits out of it. The new concept is based on a very clear understanding that it is the general interest, the interest of the government, the interest of the public, that should be in the first place, not the interest of a single individual, regardless whether it is a prime minister, a minister, or a director. Meaning that for me, it's much more important, for all of us, it's much more important that we know that people employed in the companies earn 5% more this year than the year before this one, rather than to go and open up a new facility and show to the public that we are successful and that we are working and we have a certain political arguments behind that. We are pursuing investments of higher quality, higher added value. We are offering an individualist approach, meaning that we try to understand what is important for the investors, and we are not following the principle that everybody should get the same. Why? Because, as I said, we are an investor, meaning that we are in pursuit for certain goals. What I can mention is that we are currently already working with a large international consultancy company to introduce a completely new methodology in awarding state aid, which understands that there will be certain rules and certain investors which will contribute more to the goals which are and targets set by the government will receive more dynamic assistance. The new methodologies which is basically supporting the new concept is based on effects, not on inputs. It understands, as I said, more dynamic support where the government, the society will see more interest. And as a result of the new concept, as an initial result, in the last 18 months, we have seen 10 new projects from the existing investors, meaning that the existing investors already value the new approach and the new business climate, enhanced business climate that is offered and created by the government. So we have 10 of 34 of our clients which are extending or took a decision to extend capacities, in some cases by more than triple. But we also have new investors. And I will only mention 4 large companies which will in total bring above $500 million of new investments. And we speak about areas which are pharmaceuticals, electronics, energy, and services. Meaning that, of course, this will not happen overnight. There is still a lot of work ahead of us. But as I said, being a small country, and I was discussing with some of the participants earlier today, what is our key selling point? Our key selling point is we're not cheap. We have brains, we can sell our brains, we can generate more for this, but we are a small country. Being a small country understands that we can be flexible and we can adjust. Благодаря.
Thank you, Mr. Spotovski. Before we continue, I would like to excuse the Deputy Minister. He needs to go to the Parliament. Thank you for your input, and we will continue. Okay, let's continue. Mr. Tsuchibashi, in this new normality following the pandemic crisis, now also an energy crisis, and knowing that the access to finance on the global financial markets is very uncertain. You have been driving the driving seat in the Halk Bank during extraordinary times that I mentioned already. As we were working our ways through the pandemics, we found ourselves facing the same crisis. Geopolitical uncertainties, inflation high and rising, access to finance as well. How you have steering the bank through these times?
Good afternoon. Thank you for your invitation and your questions. First of all, I must say that, can you hear me? Yes. Say that the financial system is a key factor in every national economies. The stability of the financial system amortizes the side effects of many crisis situations. In fact, in our country, thanks to the well-established financial system, we show managed the lower systems negative effects of crisis. Certainly, macroeconomic and financial system stability was managed by monetary and fiscal policy with appropriate and timely implemented measures. Monetary and fiscal policy always act in anticipatory manner in directions of taking fast action in case of potential periods of uncertainty. During these periods, the implementations of uncertainty are being viewed from both global, national perspective and most often in economics, like ours, the global aspects, has a major impact on the overall national economy. The uncertainty has huge impact to the decisions making of the population and legal entities. The banking sector in North Macedonia is one of the main supporters of the real economy, which is directly correlated with the needs and the behavior of the population and legal entities. Banks have a crucial role in giving adequate response to the financial sector conditions and providing necessary finance that will restore the trust in the systems. One of the advantages of our economy is that the banking sector is stable and well-founded. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, banks in our country, supported by appropriate measures and activities of the National Bank, managed to respond to the challenges very quickly. Banks meet the needs of citizens and companies by prolonging their credit obligations during the crisis. Now we are in a little bit more difficult situations due to the energy, geopolitical and globally rising inflation. From the point of view of financial institutions that is operating in this country, I can say that we are dealing with challenging situation. Of course, we are all trying to respond in best possible way. We are practicing different policies and strategies for different segments. I want to continue, but it seems my time is finished. If you want, we can continue next steps.
Thank you. I believe you finished, Mr. Sucevace? Or
I have a little. If
a
you
little
want,
bit,
I
okay.
finish it.
Okay. Okay. Sorry,
Okay.
I thought that.
Okay, thank you. During this period, the implications for uncertainty are being viewed from, Yes. Even in these circumstances, Halkbank AD Skopje will still be present as a partner by giving advisory service, offer profitable products, continuously working on keeping high level of customers' satisfactions in order to meet clients' needs. So far, we managed to do this very well. In the upcoming period, we are all aware and flexible to make fast adaptations and anticipations as an appropriate response to the macroeconomic conditions. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You can switch off your microphone. Okay, I believe that we are a bit late with the time. I would, with this final intervention, I will close this panel just shortly. As a final conclusion, I would say that we have a confirmation that the financial system and sector should brace for challenging time ahead, attracting more private capital, introducing a variety of financial instruments, targeting accelerated growth in the economy while staying on the fiscal consolidation path, and as well as safeguarding financial stability continuously. A financial system ready to serve the future economy demands a well-functioning partnership between all stakeholders to deliver timely response on the market needs, creating positive investment environment, introducing new innovative instruments tailored to our domestic outlook, and followed by modern financial regulation. Here I would stop by thanking the audience for listening us, and thank you to the panelists for their input, and we are continuing.